this fact, we have often been having little attention from the government. This follows the fact that as the scholars, we quite have too little voice or too minimum voice. Approach of different organs and ministries, they are less attentive, as there is a lot of sectarianism and loss of ears, or rather keeping deaf ears upon our students' affairs. So, as the students of Uganda, together with those students' members in other universities, especially those that shape up the East African community, we shall often be conducting sittings and movements in the different institutions and colleges to see that we can enrich our voice, especially before the elections are over, as a struggle to see that the government can easily hear upon what our ideals do enrich and reduce the increasing characters of going through demonstrations and strikes in universities and schools as a large area to promote democratic approach to the government. So we have come here today to seek a large call to the East African community. That the East African community is very far, and its offices as far as Tanzania. So it is well witnessed by the East African Legislative Assembly, which perhaps extended their ministers to us, like the Minister of East African Community Affairs, that is Honorable Kadaga, who is representing the current Minister of East African Community Affairs. But with this factor being so much, we are no longer getting any reaching goal, or we are no longer getting any service from the East African community as the scholars and youth. The community is so distant and very far, and yet the Minister of East African Community Affairs, Honorable Kadaga, is not coming close to us as the Ugandan youth and also the members within East African communities. Earlier, we have been facing very many challenges that have been shaping up our community, especially ever since the international sanctions that are from the West onto Uganda started. The Western sanctions captured up and covered up our country, and too many funds that originally were supporting most of the students, most of the youth, and most of the citizen initiatives quite were put too low. Of course, the business sector managed to represent itself as a way of showing the guts that they can go against what the government is not satisfying and fulfilling to them. For they have successfully waged and staged up effective public communications, and the government gave them ears. But as the students, ever since the sanctions, the government is not taking any attention to our community. Perhaps there has been too much increment in school fees payments. Most of the schools increased a high rate of fees, which this factor did not take any attention to our ministries that are concerned with students, including the Minister of Education and Sports, Honorable Kadaga. So universities are demonstrating this factor by purposely showing their advancement through making demonstrations and strikes to see that they can lower this fact, which is rather a non-democratic approach to see that we can put such disendeavors down. So we came to make a large call to the government to clarify greatly to the students, to the youth, and as well as citizens, the ample role of the East African Community Minister of Affairs, or the Minister of East African Community Affairs, and our community, which rather we are not seeing. Ever since Honorable Kadaga was elected or chosen to be Minister of East African Community Affairs, we have not had any enrichment. As the community, through the University Council for East Africa, through the East African Legislative Assembly and East African Court of Justice, they are no longer part and parcel of us. In fact, this becomes worse, noting the fact that their communications are only taking part in Tanzania and never within our common society. And for yet, the East African community is taking up a large gap, especially in the field of attaining grants from the Western world, from international monetary funds and international organizations that do give first aid, do give aid in financial institutions and so forth. So this gap has left a large block factor within our community. So the East African member states are no longer getting sufficient support from the East African community, as it was an organization that was put to instead give us a large hearing. So as younger people, we have really bridged a large gap, and we make a large call to find alternative measures to see that we can enrich our capacity building, our resource reformulation, our capacity of understanding, and how we can get resources from this community to make a satisfying community of youth, citizens, and all over the country. So this has resulted in very many factors. Of course, most of the distant schools like in Uganda, like schools in Karamoja, schools in the eastern part of Uganda, which were originally getting some big amounts of money, such as like to sustain UPE programs, universal secondary education, are no longer getting such resources. And so there is no way we can always be raising this voice, or these officials can be raising this voice to see that the governments can enrich this factor, because we do conceive it, or we have this perception that what is affecting Uganda is the same thing that is affecting the Kenyans, Tanzanians, and all over. Because these conflicts, the East African community is quite big, partially less, or rather, the East African community is quite less in solving these conflicts. When there is a demonstration, or rather, a recent demonstration that was taken by youths in Kenya and in Uganda due to corruption and high increment in URA tax charges. Of course, many youths, or many of us, were being captured into these jail cells instead of giving a honorable voice. And there is no any mediocre way of giving any solution to such, despite our struggle to see that we can attain a large effective ground. It's the only way we can enrich the voice. So the large call that we have come today is the fact that the East African community is no longer sustaining our youth program in East African nations. So being a large call that the government should do, or the governments in our regions should consider giving us a large attention to see how this East African community and its constitution can defeat with the scholars, students, and youth in its programs, such that our younger people can no longer fly abroad. Like she will talk about them for many opportunities in search for support, as she will elaborate about that. So it is a large concern that Honorable Kadaga, the current Minister of East African Community Affairs, comes out in the open eye to really give the true capacity communication on how youth are benefiting from the East African community. Because it is now coming to an end of the political term after the 5 years. And Honorable Kadaga has never approached any youth community upon enriching the services that come from the East African Community Affairs, or getting our views on how we can enhance and adjust our affairs to the East African Community Affairs. And there is no way we can confront our own private governments in Uganda or in only Kenya or in Tanzania. This is a collective community that we can only achieve this through having that collective gathering, of which the East African community has become so redundant in our youth programs all over the East African member states. ECOWAS, or the Economic Community of West African States, the COMESA, and the SADC, South African Development Community, there is a way they are quite more effective to their societies. They carry out close outreach to their people. Their children and their people come in close to see that their people bridge up a voice. Unlike the East African community, which is only enclosing itself within Tanzania. And so we really wonder, what are the emperors of the East African community? Is it a presidential camp for only resolving meetings from within Arusha, or it is a collective community for inclusiveness of all of us as younger people to see that we can use the East African community to enrich the goals that often make us quite be to develop different headache. East African community and African Union, they are the same, or rather, they do bring out the same voice, of which their voices are not reaching us, onto us. And so we decided to carry out these common meetings which most of the members who were present have quite not managed to make it here. So we are preparing to make a move to Parliament and rather go and make these addresses such that we can attend a voice of what is the role of East African community to our youth programs and what are the aims and objectives of putting the Ministry of East African Community Affairs, like Honorable Atwala Kadaga is serving at our communities.
Protocol observed. I'm really appreciative for today. My name is Priscilla. And then the reason as to why we have come here today is just to advocate for what we call students' rights in the country. First of all, there is rampant immigration in the country to the Middle East and to the Western world. Due to the challenges that students are facing today in the country, in the different parts of the country, Uganda at large has very many challenges that we as youths we face. And that has become a very big challenge to most of us when it comes to shaping the legal format of a youth. Why is it that there is an increase in the movement of people from Uganda to the Middle East, to countries like Saudi, countries like Iran, Iraq? There, being the East African community has not implemented any achievement or any rights of the youth. This has forced youths to move to different countries, to the Western world, like United States of America, like France, and then to the Middle East countries. When it comes to shaping our legal system, the East African community has not implemented anything yet, whereby we are not so sure or we are not really optimistic if they will put in or implement anything when it comes to shaping the legal system of youth in the country. Youth in the country at large face different challenges, see an improvement in different ways. There will be organization together with the government enforcement that will enable youth to come out with their psychological ideas of developing the country, which is a source of funds to the very many youths. How we can overcome these challenges, and when we see the East African community as the representative, our Right Honorable Kadaga, really implementing for us bringing up that voice as youths for us in this community, we shall really see us achieving the best. When we look at the East African community at large, during the formation of East African community, it implemented a lot, it subjected us to a lot of it had a lot of benefits. For example, bringing cooperation in the country, our financial state, source of income, opening up the world trading market. But we bet together that if our representative in the East African community, the Right Honorable Kadaga, would then therefore work hand in hand with the East African community members to find out that the youth are also benefiting in a way of opening up cooperation in the country, producing of the generation of the income in the country, and also see now when it comes to open marketing, there will be open world market that youth can now explore that technology that are really currently getting in the current ancient region.
Actually, says to back up more on her advocacy. It is well aware that most youth are currently flooding the West, in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, perhaps to go and work for these many opportunities, including askaris, gatekeepers, midwives, housemaids, houseboys and housegirls, which rather is putting our social dignity at a low pace. Most of these people are often going there, and the consequences that they are facing abroad are rather not to an approximate measurable level. Most of them go there and there is a lot of ready marketing. The removal of their kidneys, the removal of their intestines, some of them continue to pass off from there and starve without any effective support from any community or any person, especially those in the Middle East. Of course, we still hear that most of the conflicts that are currently sweeping up all over the world are coming from the Middle East. These people no longer, most times, end up having not what to feed on and what not to eat. But we expected this perhaps to be a role of the East African community, which we still rather stick on, as a way of monitoring most of these people's movements. The immigration is, which must be under the as a big role to the East African community. How are the people from East Africa professing life abroad? Like those people, like the European Union does the people from Europe and why in Uganda or why in Kenya. Like the United States does to its people who are from the US to Uganda, it gives them sufficient security, gives them sufficient support, and the repatriation during times of wars, conflicts, or times of risky diseases. Unlike our community of East African community, either there is an outbreak of a deadly disease abroad, either there is a big war, the community can never come out to give any backup of that side. So during times of international miscontemplation, wars, deadly diseases, perhaps the community is a redundant body. It can never come out to say anything on how we can solve up these things here, or how it can enable black people to come far away from, as far as the Middle East, from Iraq, back to Kenya, or to Uganda. Even up to the present day, ever since people were told during the period of COVID, the community has never given any relief of any negotiation upon the COVID times, which happened just as recent 2 years back. And too many scholars ended up with education, many of them dropped out, many institutions broke off, many businesses have been shut off, many schools closed off, but the community is comfortably seated without any communication for after all. So as youth, we really feel a large negative hold on the role of East African community, until at least it comes out and it opens its wings to really enriching our curious society, such that somebody in maybe Kisumu can see the enrichment of East African community. Somebody in Dodoma is seeing the enrichment of East African community. Or somebody in Juba physically can see the community. Even somebody staying as far as Jinja or Mbarara can see what really the role and ambition is of the community, rather coming, other than waiting to make meetings and conferences, hearing that President Museveni is in Arusha for East African Community Dialogue. Again, after 1 year, President Museveni, President Uhuru, or President Kenyatta is in East African Community. Rather, the presidents are not the community. We assume or take assumption that the nations and the citizens are the ones that are collectively shaping up the community, of which the community is no longer reaching out to us. So we really came to make that great call and a large public communication, and that as Ugandan and East African people, the East African community is rather doing too little service to the scholars, to the youth, citizens, and the people of East Africa. It is rather serving more of the ambitions of the government heads, who continue to make their own selectives and sit there on different cabinets and rather stop there. I think that the East African community has not played a large role towards the youth activities as far as younger people and the younger citizens in our country is concerned. As far as our minor businesses, minor opportunities, initiatives, and smaller enterprises is enriching. That's why we really come to partially communicate that we have gotten almost nothing from Right Honorable Edward Kadaga as Ugandans. And as the minister, she has really done nothing towards our activity, and as a representative of the East African community. So we really speak this with great ability that it is time for the East African community to now come and defend its interests to our people, to our common people, and to we ourselves as especially the younger, the youth, and together with the parents. Tax everywhere has heightened, but we no longer have any communication ground until we have quite reached this far to see that we can make a beginning of official communication to our country, to see that we can bring the best. And we shall be reaching out to many political personnel, civil rights communities, and different initiative bodies, international and national, to see that they can capture on us and really make our voice stand international until that day that we shall reach there. So, Mr. Chairperson, that has been much of our communication that brought us, and especially to bring you as a big representative to our government, and at least to give us the hearing, and we are appreciative for your coming.
Okay, thank you so much. This is youth and scholars. African Legislative Assembly, which is on. We now have East African flag, which is standing, we can call it the coat of arms. So the few things that are remaining, we also have the Minister for East African Affairs. We still don't have one binding constitution. Uganda is still using its constitution, all those ones. And inside there, those constitutions, much as they are binding factors, but there are different disparities still operating. You see. So all those are processes. But as youth, what you have started is good, but I only urge all of us to use the right channels to echo out our voices within our settings. And I also think if all the guild in different universities, because now that one we cut across, if they can come together and form a forum, all guild presidents within respective universities or institutions of higher learning, if they can come together, form a voice, some of these channels, some of these issues could be channeled through the same. Here in East Africa, if you can come together as leaders, then you champion the students' issues alongside that line. I think it will have a more positive impact than a few people coming and then saying we are championing this for the betterment of the East African community. To do, but like I said, we need to use right direction and right channels of communication to advocate for our rights and our benefits as member states of East African community. Otherwise, I thank you so much. May God bless you.